Hey friends, I'm a little late in my wrap up of 2022, but I wanted to share with you the top 5 things that I learned in this last year. The first one's gonna be that RPM anxiety is real. And if you wanna get better in trials, you're gonna have to learn how to wind up the bike and attack bigger obstacles, bigger hills, and building up RPM or flywheel energy and then popping the clutch is the way that so many of the advanced moves are done. But it's hard to build up the RPMs when you're afraid. I know for me, I wasn't real sure about my clutch control, and there's just this thing in your brain that starts going, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, this could go really wrong. And so usually you kind of panic or you don't build up enough energy in the bike to do the thing that you want to do. So in order to get over that, I had to just learn to twist that throttle. I mean, just put the bike in neutral and crank it halfway, crank it 3/4, crank it all the way to the throttle stop. I thought my bike was gonna explode at some point. There was, pieces falling off the clutch lever adjusters and dirt was falling off. I was like, oh gosh, this bike is gonna explode. But eventually it becomes normalized. And I'm not saying I always wind the bike up to the throttle stop, but what I'm saying is you start to figure out, okay, that's 50%, that's 75, that's 100, and what do I need to accomplish this move? Let me, figure that out. I'm gonna crank it up to this high. Starting off, we're just gonna look at using the throttle and understanding the full throttle versus a first third, 2/3, and then full go. If you're anything like me, you potentially have never revved your bike up all the way to the throttle stop. I hadn't done it for the entire first year that I owned the bike. It's something to get over, that RPM anxiety, afraid the whole bike is just gonna take off on you. RPM anxiety is something that I think a lot of you guys might be familiar with, and the best thing that I found is just to drill it into a small hill. So I'd wind up the bike 50%, let out the clutch smoothly, and go up the hill. Then I do 3/4 and go up the hill. But getting comfortable with more RPMs has definitely opened up my riding. The next one's gonna be about micro drills. And what I mean by that is if you've watched my videos, I usually try and take a skill and break it down into the smallest components. So if I'm working on something like a wheelie, I'm probably gonna find a way to do it in a safe manner. So with my feet on the ground, just popping the front end up and working on that balance point, working on the clutch control and the throttle control is something that I've had to kind of break down all these different extremities and just do the right hand, then just do the left hand, then combine them, then add another step. And these smaller drills as a part of my warm-up have really revolutionized the way that I practice and help me build in layers of building blocks so that I can do more advanced moves. What's happening in my brain is that I can't think about all the things that are needed to go into a zap, for instance, as I'm approaching an obstacle in an event. I just need to be able to do it. And so in order for something to become assimilated in your brain and for it to be automatic, you have to practice and drill each of those different components again and again. It creates muscle memory to where you don't even have to think about it. And so the third thing that I want to share is about the progression method. It's basically what I've just shared. The way that I learn is also the way that I teach. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. When I was a volleyball coach, I knew that when I taught the kids, I had to teach them how to just move their feet before working on setting the ball. They couldn't handle working on both their upper body and their lower body at the same time. So this progression method actually has 6 steps. And the first of which is to pull out that little micro skill and just drill it again and again in a safe manner. Next, I'm going to add in some cue words so that I remember what the focal point is. And especially for something like a zap, I'm usually going to be saying stay low, jump, stay low, jump. And I'm going to repeat that as I'm doing it to really cement in to my brain so that my body and my brain are connected and they know what they're doing together. Next, I'm gonna just go after good, clean reps. I usually like to set a watch for about 10 minutes and just drill it again and again, working on form, good technique, and trying to get it right. And then when I do have it to be successful, that's when I like to celebrate. So you may see on some of the videos, I'm like, yes, that's the one. Because what happens is when you celebrate your own success, you actually have an emotional response to what happened. And when our emotions are high, so are memories. Those emotions will cement in the memory so that you can recall it again and again. That's why you can still remember your wedding day and some of the more important things that have happened in your life. So then I'm gonna move on from maybe that 10-minute focused effort just on one skill and use it in a more real world scenario. So I might find a different log or different height thing, obstacle, whatever it is that I wanna do, I'm gonna try and put it in a more real world scenario. And then finally, I'm gonna do more of a circuit training. So if I'm wanting to work on zaps, I might also add in static balance and turning. Then zap, static balance, turning. By doing that, I'm actually drilling that into my long-term memory. So then instead of only being able to recall it after maybe 20 practice reps in a row, I can do it whenever it's needed. I can call upon that skill because it's in the long-term memory. So that progression method can be really helpful for your individual practice sessions. The next thing that I really learned this last year is on suspension setup, and that it does make a difference depending upon your rider weight. So the further away you are from the generic 170 pounds that the factory set these bikes up for, the more it's going to play an impact. I think of it kind of similar to someone who says, just ride it, just leave it the way it is. It's a trials bike. Well, if you happen to weigh 170 pounds, you don't have as much understanding of how different it is when you're over that by a significant amount. It's kind of like someone who's short who says, it's an airplane, just sit in the seat and be fine. I'm 6'6". When I get into an airplane, my knees are all jamming up into the seat in front of me. It's not fine. I want something that's set up for me. I'd much rather be in first class with more legroom, just like I'd rather be on a trials bike with suspension that's properly set up for my rider weight. Friends make this more than just a sport. When I think about some of the great individuals that I've gotten to know, not only in my local club, but also even across the globe in conversations and comments, this really does feel like a community of people who are giving and helpful and want others to succeed. Yes, there's competition and we're trying to beat one another at a local event, but it's not really about beating each other as much as it is about beating the terrain. When a trials master sets up a course, we all want to be successful and make it through there clean. And so there's helping aspects. And gosh, what other sport is there where your competitor is also your friend, is also the one who's helping you? This is just a great community. And I recently had the opportunity to take photographs for a youth event, and I really fell in love with the idea of just giving back to the community, trying to be helpful. And I think that's what's so great about the trials community in general. It's from young to old, men, women, and everyone's out there to try and help each other and have a good time. All right, and then finally, this isn't something I learned this year. I've known it for a while, but I can't go without saying it. Trials keeps me sane. Oh my gosh, the stress and the different things that build up in life when I can go ride my trials bike and just focus on one thing. You know, they've called it unitasking. Instead of multitasking, just monofocus, focusing on one thing, everything else just fades away. And especially when I've got that throttle wound up and I'm getting ready to splat, you've got to be focused on just that thing. Otherwise, it could go incredibly bad. I think it's that stress relief that comes from being on the bike, getting out in the woods, fresh air, and usually some physicality to it that really helps me to come back to my job, my family in a better frame of mind. Those are the top things that I've learned this last year. I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know in the comments down below which relates to you. Oh, hey, one last thing. If you guys are interested in a list of those micro skill drills, I've got a free resource you can pick up at trialsprogression.com, and that way you guys can have a guide to better practice.